Well, hello everyone and welcome. My name is Melissa Fitzgerald and it is a privilege to gather during Women's History Month to celebrate women who shape our communities, our Commonwealth, and our country. Pennsylvania has long been home to extraordinary women, from those who fought for independence and equality, to those who lead our institutions, advocate for our communities, and inspire the next generation. Women have always played a vital role in the story of our Commonwealth. And for me, Pennsylvania is not just part of that story, it's where I was raised, and it shaped who I am. No matter where I've lived, Pennsylvania is always home. As we approach the 250th anniversary of our nation, it is especially meaningful to reflect on the women who have helped guide Pennsylvania forward and the leaders who continue that work today. We are fortunate to be joined by an extraordinary group of women whose leadership and service has touched countless lives across Pennsylvania and beyond. Before I begin, I would like to thank America250PA and especially Cassandra Coleman and Therese Casey for the invitation to be part of this meaningful conversation. It's truly an honor to be here. And now, please help me welcome the remarkable women joining us for today's conversation.
Now it is my honor to introduce to you today's distinguished panel. Please welcome former First Lady of Pennsylvania, Michelle Ridge.
What doesn't kill you makes you stronger. Stand a little taller. Doesn't mean I'm lonely when I'm alone. What doesn't kill you makes the fighter. Puts that fever lighter.
Former First Lady of Pennsylvania, Frances. First Lady of Pennsylvania, Lori Shapiro.
Just like
And former First Lady of the United States of America, Dr. Jill Biden.
Thanks. Well, thank you. What a thrill. I am so happy to be sharing the stage with First Lady Dr. Jill Biden, First Lady Lori Shapiro, First Lady Frances Wolf, and First Lady Michelle Ridge. Let's give them another round of applause. Yay! Very nice. Thank you all for your leadership, for your service, and for the example you continue to set for women all across this Commonwealth and this nation. So, let's start with the beginning of your journeys in your roles as First Lady. Take us back to the moment you found out you were First Lady. What was that like for you and what changed for you? And this is a question for anyone to answer.
Okay, I'll start. So actually, I guess the election days actually was election week for us because it took so long for them to decide. As you remember, I'll take you back. Remember Steve Kornacki on the TV, giving all the stats, until you were ready to kill him. And so I can remember Joe and I took our cups of coffee and we went down. We live on a man-made lake and we were sitting down there because I had tons of family at my house. And so we were just having coffee and all of a sudden our grandkids came running out of the house. Nana, Pop, you've won, you've won. And it was just such a beautiful moment. And so I just realized, that, I don't know, I felt that the people in this country put their trust in my husband, and I knew that then they put their trust in me. So I felt like it was a big responsibility, but heck, it was so exciting.
So, yeah.
I am the senior First Lady here. So that moment came for us 31 years ago. So we've been out of office, Tom's been out of office for 25 years. I think our children were young. They were 7 and 8 when Tom was elected in 1994. And so the first thing I thought about was, well, we're going to move to Harrisburg and we'll get them in school. The first thought went to our children. And then I was the public library director for 15 years before the election. And so I had traveled Pennsylvania, and there is no one who knows communities better than the public library director. So I had the good fortune to have this great preparation to take on the responsibility of First Lady, always there in support of my husband. And knowing communities and knowing that I was going to get to see a lot of my library friends again, although I was leaving my library in the midst of a building project. So it was really, it was so exciting, and we didn't move to Harrisburg until they finished their school year. So it was the summer of '95 when we first came to Harrisburg.
Very nice, thank you. Would anyone else like to jump into that one, or should I move on?
Well, just very quickly, I'm impressed by how you took stock straight away, and you were, in my view, very brave. Because my first reaction was I cried. and my wonderful husband who's here, I wouldn't be in this position. So, thank you. But we have photographs. I just fell on his shoulder and sobbed. And then, and again, we all realize the magnitude of this position of public service and the responsibility to do it well. And at that point in time, I didn't know what I didn't know, but I knew that we had to step up. And I think that's where the tears came in. Yeah.
Well, I would like to say, first of all, that I'm really honored to sit on this stage with all of these amazing women who I have admired and looked up to over the years, and who have really given me a whole lot of really wise counsel and great advice, and who have been there for me and for our family through somewhat of a challenging time last year. And I'm really honored to be with all of you and appreciate your friendship and counsel and support over all this time. And I had a hybrid reaction, like Frances and Michelle. I didn't cry, but I was like, oh gosh, what am I going to do now? And then I thought, of course, of our kids and how are we going to manage this transition for them. So I was really in that space with you guys, which is why all of your advice was so wonderful and welcomed.
I just want to add that we don't do this alone. And there is an orientation that the NGA, National Governors Association, provides for incoming governors and first spouses. And that was very helpful because you immediately had a network of people. If you had a question, you could call somebody and ask them, and it really was very helpful. And then there is great bipartisan cooperation, at least in our time, among first spouses, because we face a lot of the same issues. And so that, and I had great support from Tom's team, which was wonderful.
And it really sounds like it's all about service for everyone in the family.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well. So each of you stepped into an incredibly visible role, and you were given a unique platform to make meaningful change. When you first stepped into that role, what did you all hope to accomplish?
I would say that I really didn't know what I wanted to accomplish. I was really, again, focused on the sort of the transition in our family, and I wasn't really sure. And it wasn't until I got out into the community and across the Commonwealth that I started to see where I thought I could have an impact. And it was really meeting with people in their communities, learning about the work that they were doing, what their needs were, what the issues were, that I really sort of found my footing and found where I wanted to spend my time and help have an impact. So it was a process. I definitely didn't come to it with any preconceived ideas.
I was invited by Judge Rendell, to have a coffee together soon after Tom won the election, and before we went to Harrisburg, and she gave such wise advice, and she said, just go slowly, and you'll find your way, but you don't need to rush into anything. And I took it to heart. And And I think to be involved with, to choose the issues, but to choose the ones that are sincere to you, that are authentic, that give you the greatest interest. And I took my cue from Tom and the administration and some of the projects that they were working on, and I was able to, I guess, come at it in a different way in visiting schools or food security issues or women in corrections. These were issues that they were working with, but also that I had had some experience with. So it was a very nice sort of meeting with ways, but I took it slowly because I didn't know how. You had to choose the extent to which you wanted to delve into these issues around the state and whether it made sense.
Of course. Well, I think I'm a little bit different, Lori, in that I was a Senate spouse for I don't know how many years, a lot. And so I had worked on many issues as a Senate spouse, and I had worked on breast cancer. I had the Biden Breast Health Initiative, and then I became second lady, and of course, I worked with Michelle Obama on joining forces in our military initiative, and our son was in the military, so of course that really owned a piece of my heart. And I'm an educator. I've been teaching for 40 years, and thank you.
And you continued to teach as
and
First
I
Lady.
continued, but you know, sometimes, and so I was ready to go as First Lady. I knew I had my staff. I knew exactly what I wanted to work on. But sometimes, even with all that, the issue chooses you. Because if you remember, we were in the middle of COVID. And so I knew that I had to be out there. I had to be traveling the country, getting vaccines into the arms of Americans, and talking about safety, having people believe in the vaccine, and going into schools and meeting with teachers. And so that took a good year of Joe's presidency, that I was working on the issues of COVID alongside all the other issues that I was involved with.
So I think Dr. Biden is correct in saying sometimes the issue chooses you. Mm-hmm. And so at Rotary, before Tom was sworn in, I was still a Rotarian in Erie. They asked one of the board members from the Pennsylvania Breast Cancer Coalition approached me and said, "You will be honorary chair of the Pennsylvania Breast Cancer Coalition." And I said, "I am honored to follow Ellen Casey, who was a wonderful First Lady." And I was honored to be asked to follow in her footsteps. So I just want to make that clear. But then, of course, I'm a librarian. So, of course, I would be interested in libraries and strengthening libraries. I think lifelong learning is the key to having a satisfying life. It enriches a person, and it enriches the family, and it enriches a community when people commit to lifelong learning.
Agreed. Well, let's get into some of those initiatives and in more detail. First Lady Ridge, throughout your career and your time as First Lady, you supported causes, as you've mentioned, but also ranging from combating violence against youth to education and literacy for our Commonwealth's children. From your perspective, how does protecting and educating our young girls shape stronger communities in and around Pennsylvania?
So, in 93 and 94, the most likely victim of crime was a child, and the most likely perpetrator of a crime was a child. So in the first day, the governor, Tom, called a special session on crime, but I wanted to be in the prevention business. And so we started something called the Governor's Community Partnership for Safe Children. And yes, and it was in my role, sometimes leadership is not, leading the charge, but being the facilitator, bringing the stakeholders together. And that's the kind of way that I like to lead, is bringing people together and to come to some kind of plan of action. And so that was really important. And also the promotion of evidence-based programming that actually improves people's lives rather than just is a Band-Aid. So that was a cause that I strongly believed in, is introducing gender-based or evidence-based programming. And I think for me, strengthening and making communities safer and and having children become more resilient, and to make sure that they learn skills and capacities so that whatever path in life they choose, they can succeed and by that way, they strengthen their community.
Well, First Lady Wolf, during your time as First Lady, you raised awareness about food insecurity across Pennsylvania, an issue that affects many families and often falls heavily on women to feed their households. So why was this work so important to you? How did it find you? And how does addressing food insecurity create stronger opportunities for women and their families?
I started off visiting schools and looking at free meals that that each school offered their students. And I traveled the state to sort of promote and to give attention to that issue. And it was from K through 12. And they were all different ways that different school districts and different individual schools were tackling this problem. Then I think the best way also is just to keep asking questions. So one of my questions was, well, what happens after 12th grade? And there was nothing. Especially if you go on to college or trade schools, further education. So I started visiting colleges around the state. And this is where I caught my breath, because there are so many people of students helping students, colleges helping students. There were food pantries. Some students took out their clothes from their closet, put shelving in, and developed food pantry for their colleagues. Some of the colleges, like if I remember correctly, Bloomsburg, it was a huge store of shampoos, of food, of all kinds of goodies. And then along the back, they had clothing for men and women, soup to nuts parts, so they could be dressed to go to an interview for a job. Some also included pencils and paper, notebooks, sort of all the things that you need, for classroom work and research. And this was all across the state. Some colleges had, the president of the college might open up, okay, Wednesday is pizza night. The entire college is invited. This was a way of students who were food insecure could be assured of a meal that night. And food insecurity doesn't mean that you're going hungry forever. It means that you don't know where your next meal is coming from and when. Yeah. And that makes, creates an anxiety. And I thought, when you're asking people, you're going to be successful, how do you guarantee that? And if you're anxious about sort of next steps of next meal, it's difficult to keep going. A lot of people have to, especially for community colleges, they're older, they're married, they have children, so they're balancing, do they pay the rent, child care, food, transportation, what's going to, be compromised? And a lot of times it's a meal. We met people who are professional people now, who have doctorates, who when they were in university got jobs in restaurants so that they could get a meal in a restaurant. These are stories we had I could go on, but this is what impressed me. But if you students who didn't have a guaranteed breakfast or lunches at school, K to 12, if they didn't have that, their performance wasn't very strong. The minute you introduced solid, consistent meals, their performances, they raised their performance. they were much more successful. So we're talking about something that is very basic. It is the ground floor on success. And when we compromise that, we're losing the promise of real talent.
Absolutely. Thank you. First Lady Shapiro, you have been a strong advocate for women's issues, from menstrual equity to maternal and women's health initiatives. Why is it important to support and invest in these efforts, and what opportunities do you see to uplift women across Pennsylvania?
Sure. I think it's really interesting, Frances said about issues finding you. I mean, these issues really did find me. I was visiting schools and meeting with young women who I was incredibly impressed were happy and comfortable to talk about something that when I was a kid, we would, shove tampons up our sleeves and hide them, and nobody ever wanted to talk about, tampons and pads and having your period. It was the conversation that never happened. And I was meeting with these students, and they were talking about their friends and their experiences and people who didn't have what they need. I met a woman who was keeping her daughters home from school. She had 3 daughters and herself. She was keeping her daughters home from school when they had their period because they didn't have enough money to buy the supplies that they need, and she found herself in truancy court. And I thought, how is this helping anybody, right? This makes no sense, and we shouldn't accept this. Women and girls need every opportunity to succeed, and if you can't be in your classroom because you don't have the money for a basic hygiene supply, that's a real problem. And so we started visiting nonprofits and hearing about the work they were doing, and then it occurred to me, I heard that our schools were calling our nonprofits to ask for period supplies. And I thought, well, this makes no sense. Our institutions shouldn't be asking our nonprofits for basic supplies. We don't expect people to bring their own toilet paper to the restrooms or their own paper towels or their own soap. So it just seemed like common sense to me. And I think if you get the basics right and you give everybody the chance to be in their classroom, not to have their learning interrupted, it sets them up for success later on. Just like having meals and being prepared to learn because you're not hungry. All of those things set the stage for opportunity and success later on. And that's just one example. The maternal health issue is real. There are so many women who are struggling to get care. We have maternal health deserts. We have issues with rural health care. And these are things that we need to pay attention to. We need to make sure that everyone has what they need in order to have the opportunity to succeed and get out there and do whatever it is that they want to do. So
certainly without those basics, you can't thrive.
You can't thrive. Yeah.
So First Lady Dr. Biden, you have a long history, even before your time at the White House, of advocating for women's health. Your work includes the Biden Breast Health Initiative, as you mentioned, and the White House Initiative on Women's Health Research, particularly during Women's History Month. Why is it important that we continue advancing conversations and action around women's health?
Well, let me ask the women in the audience. How many of you have more questions about your health than you have answers?
Yes.
Yeah. So that's what I found, that women, all the research before the mid-1990s, do you know that all the research on health was done on men? Yes. And did you know that all the animals that were tested were male animals? So this was, I remember I was grading papers in my East Wing office. You remember that. So Maria Shriver called me, former First Lady of California, and she came in and she said, Jill, we really have a problem. We don't have enough funding. We don't have enough research on women's health. And anyway, we got talking about it. There was a big article in the New York Times about menopause. And so I talked to Joe that night, and I said, Joe, we've got to do something about this. And he said, you're right, we do. And so he got to work, and we formed the Women's Health Initiative, the White House Initiative, and then in 1 year we poured $1 billion into that effort. And so I'm continuing that work with the Milken Institute. I'm chairman of their Women's Health Network, but it's so important, I think, that women get the answers, not that they need, but they deserve. Mm-hmm. And especially, I don't want to say, like, right now, menopause is, and this is like no pun intended, is like the new hot topic. But we need to think beyond that. I mean, a lot of us, and I know there are a lot of students in here and a lot of young women, but we need to go beyond menopause and think, you know, what's going to happen to us in later years? What are the effects of menopause? What are the effects on aging? What are some of the treatments we can use or the remedies? I mean, we have to answer these challenges, and we have to get the answers. So that's why I'm working hard on women's health now.
Well, thank you for doing it, because nobody was talking about it before you were. So, while the role of First Lady is certainly public, it's also deeply personal, and each of you carried this responsibility while also raising families. All of you are mothers. What was it like to balance the responsibilities of motherhood as well as the responsibilities as First Lady?
Well, I'll start in that our children were adults, so we're very different to having young folk there. And I marvel at coming into this position and this job with young children. I imagine it to be incredibly difficult because the real balance of being, you know, the full-time parent and to the best of your ability to be the full-time First Lady, for public servant. I would think would be difficult. With our family, our daughters, one lived, at that point in time, lived in New York, and the other in Boston. They eventually became closer to Philadelphia and Connecticut. In this position, you receive a lot of attention and also critiques of how to be better. And our daughters were very, very aware of the critiques, but when we would gather like this, we never talked about it. They never brought it up, and we would indulge in real family time of books and films and you know, what was normal. I mean, we really tried to keep it like that. You know, this was a time when they each got married, they each had children. So in these 8 years was transformative for our family. We lost both of Tom's parents. So there were, you know, very highs and very sad times as well. It was a real roller coaster. And without them there with us, sort of this constancy, but to brace us as family members, you know, who took out the trash and did our own ironing. You know, those kinds of things that without our daughters being that base for us, you know, I'm not sure, you know, they made us safe. So
and a
I
normal
hope
family
they feel
life,
the same
it sounds
way.
like. Yeah. Would anyone else like to jump in?
I mean, it was definitely a lot of adjusting.
Yeah.
I mean, a lot of adjusting. We have 4 kids, and they were at different stages in their lives when we started in this journey. But I got a lot of wonderful advice, actually, from Mrs. Ridge over here. Really wonderful advice. She had children younger than mine, but around the same ages-ish when she started doing this. So I got a lot of really great advice. But I think one of the really fun things, and I told you this story. My son went up into the attic in the governor's residence. There is an attic up there, and it's filled with amazing things that you can find. And he came down. He said, "I want to bring a desk down into my bedroom so I can do my homework." So he drags this desk down into his bedroom, and he starts opening it up to put stuff away. And he opens the desk drawer, and it says, "Tommy Ridge lived here." Oh. And he was like, "Mom, look at this! Look what I found!" But for him to be connected to another child who sat in that room or sat at that desk and did their homework to sort of get that anchor, that was meaningful to him. But I think for us, you know, again, it is a lot of adjusting for the kids, but being with your family and having your kids and doing all those normal kid things. My son's going to prom later today, so I'm going from here to prom pictures, but like that stuff keeps you anchored. It keeps you anchored and focused on the things that really matter, and that's a real blessing for us.
Could I just ask a question?
You just heard Mrs. Shapiro talk about Tommy Ridge lived here. But so they were 7 and 8, and so they were my priority. Tom was a very busy governor, and I was trying to do my best to support him in his issues and in his things that he really wanted to accomplish. But our home is 300 miles away. We're from northwestern Pennsylvania, where a lot of people have never been, and so we needed to make and to support my husband, to support the governor. He needed to have family life because that really helps anchor anybody. And so Leslie and Tommy were in school here in Harrisburg. We became really much part of the Harrisburg community. So in between the initiatives and all the events and things that were scheduled for me that I did, I sat on the bleachers for Little League practice. I made sure that I was one of the mothers that cleaned tables in the cafeteria in their school. Of course we went to the library. Of course. we went to the library. So, and actually having children made things more fun. So we had animals that lived in the residence. Leslie had a hamster named Julie, and Tommy had won the last chicken when the 4th grade incubation. He brought a chick home to the governor's residence named Frankie, who had a brief stay. We had a hedgehog, and of course we had started with 1 dog, 2 dogs, then we bred the second dog, and we had 3 dogs. And it was lively actually for the staff there too, because Tommy Ridge, as you might guess, is a little bit of a prankster. So he's a
legend.
He's actually a legend at the residence. And we went black bear cub tagging for several years. We went elk spotting on horseback for several years. We were canoeing on the Susquehanna. We did a lot of adventures that we could do as a family. And so Leslie and Tommy and Leslie sat at the piano with Fred Rogers when we honored Fred Rogers. And so it was a wonderful time for young people. They met so many incredibly talented and wonderful Pennsylvanians, both men and women. But I would tell you that it was a balancing act, and it's the same kind of balancing act that a lot of women in Pennsylvania do between their responsibilities in their communities and raising their children. So it's not unique to us. It's a shared sort of a lifestyle, and so but we had fun.
And it is great to hear from all of you about this too, because so many women are juggling those same exact issues. So thank you for sharing. I don't know if you wanted to add anything, Dr. Biden.
Well, for us, I mean, my children have never known anything but politics.
Right.
I mean, they grew up as little children, as babies, you know, and because their father held office for so many years. So Joe he'd leave every morning at 7:30, take the train when he was a senator from Wilmington, go to Washington, and then he would take the train back every single day. So I was basically doing what I think probably all of you are doing. I had to, it was just a little bit harder, a little bit more responsibility because Joe wasn't there, but I was teaching. I had 3 kids, and I was I had to be a Senate spouse and then later on Second Lady and First Lady. But the good thing is my grandchildren grew up the same way. I mean, they have never known anything but politics for me and for Joe. And they were involved in every single campaign and worked hard for us. And now we have a great-grandchild. And the good thing is some of them even want to run for office.
Well, Pennsylvania has long been a place where strong women step forward to lead, and each of you have carried that legacy forward in your own ways. First Lady Dr. Biden, of course, you are a national leader, but long before your career and your time in the White House, You grew up in a small town of Willow Grove, Pennsylvania. Anyone from Willow Grove? Good.
Yes.
Yay. Okay, good.
Yeah.
Can you share how your experiences growing up in Pennsylvania helped shape who you are today?
Sure. So, I do consider myself a Philly girl, Jilly from Philly. And
Go Birds.
yeah, go Birds. I'm a big sports fan. And, I felt so fortunate because going to school, I went to Upper Moreland High School and grew up in the public schools there. And, we were so immersed in history. I mean, think of all the school trips we took to the Betsy Ross House, to the Liberty Belt. I skated as a young girl on the canals at Valley Forge. We went to Bowman's Hill. We were steeped in the history. And I didn't really realize it then, what a gift that was. And my father was in World War II. I mean, patriotism was big in my family. We always went to the parades on the holidays. We always had the flag outside of our house. But really, I think for Pennsylvanians, I mean, really and truly, it's a gift that we all come from Pennsylvania.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
I have a couple of friends whose children are going to school in California, and they're in Philadelphia like over the weekend in the past few days, and I did take it for granted, and I thought about that. This was my backyard growing up as a child, and it's such a gift. But First Lady Shapiro, you are in a unique leadership position as we approach the 250th anniversary of our nation. What responsibility does our Commonwealth have to ensure Pennsylvania women are included in the story we tell about our nation?
That's a great question, because there are so many generations of women who have helped shape the story of Pennsylvania and shape the story of our nation, and they are often underrepresented in our storytelling about these things. And so it's really important that we make sure to speak about these women and highlight them. And one great, very obvious example is Hannah Penn. And I am embarrassed to say, I really didn't know very much about Hannah Penn. I really didn't. And when I came to learn that she led Pennsylvania for 15 years, this wasn't like a step in for a minute kind of thing. She led Pennsylvania for 15 years. That's amazing. And I don't know if any of you have ever been in the governor's office. There are portraits of all the former governors that sit around where the governor sits at his desk and works. And I've often said, where's Hannah Penn? Why is she not up there? And rumor has it that Governor Wolf tried to get a portrait of Hannah Penn in there. That's what
Is that
I
true?
was told. Is it true? This is what I heard, but I don't know. I think things like that are really important. I know. Well, Andrea, I know I saw you. Andrea from PHMC, you're here. I think we need a portrait of Hannah Penn.
Yes.
Let's do it. But that's just one example. We've had so many amazing women in Pennsylvania. Marian Anderson, just as one example that pops in my head, an amazing opera singer who fought against segregation, and just so many amazing women. So events like this are really important, so we have the opportunity to highlight and talk about it. So I really appreciate this opportunity.
Well, thank you all for sharing all of these fantastic and inspiring stories, and I think it's incumbent upon all of us to continue the example that you are setting by sharing the stories of powerful women in our Commonwealth and in the history of our country. So First Lady Wolf, during your time in office, you championed young people across the Commonwealth. Why is it important for young girls in Pennsylvania to see women in leadership roles?
I think that, let me start off with a story. Our younger daughter is a geologist, and she majored in geology at college. So this was her second year at university, and I said to her, "Oh, Kate, I'm so proud of you. You're doing, you're majoring in geology. It's, a science, and there are, not many women, and I'm getting precious. And I'm just, stroking her, and I could see her like this." And I could see sort of like the shades on her eyes were just coming down. She was humoring me. And then she let me finish, and she said, "Mommy, more than half my professors are women." And so shame on me. But when I think of her choosing this, and she chose it for a whole lot of reasons, but she stayed in this field because there was a strong presence of professors, of women, who guided her through the program. And that's why I think to see women who work hard, who are successful, and to show a model. We all learn from example, one way or another. And to have women in any enterprise to show the effort of the work, to show that it was successful, that it's and then to show that you continue and it makes a difference, and to see that as a community that you can join, work in, and also to have this community embrace you and guide you and mentor you all the way through. I think it just feeds on itself.
Yeah,
and I
absolutely.
think in that way it's incredibly important.
Yeah, I agree. First Lady Ridge, having served in this role yourself, you've had a front row seat to how leadership in Pennsylvania has evolved. How have you seen the role and opportunities for women leaders grow since you were First Lady?
I think, well, right now, for the first time in Erie, we have a woman mayor for the first time, and not for the first time, but a woman who is county executive. So we're hoping that having those two women lead the city and the county, that will get those people to work together. Because women are very good at getting people to work together.
Yes, we are.
I also have a very dear friend who was a bank president. She was the first female bank president, regional bank president. I've seen women step up and finally take the opportunity and take the risk, because there's a risk to stepping out and popping your head above for everyone. And I think I've seen a lot more women in leadership roles. I think it's really important for women who are in leadership roles to mentor younger women. It's so critical. Offer internships to young women so that they, and I think young women, if they can take an internship, they can see whether they like that particular issue. I think so I have seen so much more engagement by women in leadership. And on the flip side of that, I have to tell you that it's also important for men to see women in leadership. I remember because I was library director, I was asked to join the Erie Rotary, all men. And so I joined Rotary, and I remember having lunch with a table full of men, and they said, there certainly has been an invasion of women in Rotary. and I Invasion? Invasion. I couldn't resist. I said, Mr. Wright, it wasn't an invasion. Right now it's just an infiltration. So I think it's really important for women to, they don't have to demand the respect. They earn the respect by their effective leadership. But I think it's important to acknowledge that it is important that men recognize the effectiveness of women. So I'm looking forward to a great future in Erie with the two female local leaders. I also want to say that leadership doesn't just mean you're in politics or in public life, that there's leadership on so many different levels. And there's, whether it's in the for-profit world or it's in the nonprofit world, there are so many opportunities for young women. I'm 79, so I think I'm the oldest one on the stage right now.
We're not telling.
But
It's yours.
we just, my generation didn't have we either thought we didn't have as many opportunities, or we really didn't have as many opportunities because the mindset was that men were leaders. But I have to say, over 250 years, there are a lot of women in Pennsylvania who never accepted that and stepped up to lead in very wonderful and effective ways for the history of Pennsylvania.
I agree. Well, I guess, when we talk about opening doors for the next generation, we're really continuing this legacy that stretches back centuries. And Pennsylvania women have been shaping culture, building communities, and leading change since the very beginning of our Commonwealth. And as we approach the semi-quincentennial, and I said that correctly, shockingly.
Yes.
But I heard you can also say semi-quincentennial, so either way is acceptable. But we're celebrating 250 years of Pennsylvania women who shaped culture and built communities. What do you think is the lasting legacy of women's contributions to Pennsylvania over 250 years? And this is a lightning round.
Oh, that's a tough question.
I think it's the students I meet. I get to travel across the Commonwealth and meet with students in their schools, and I think the young women that I'm meeting are amazing, and they are fearless, and they are ready to take on whatever it is. And I visited a school in Tunkhannock, and it was the students were amazing. The school was amazing, and I had a wonderful meeting with these kids who were talking about menstrual equity and food insecurity. And at the end of it, I was talking to one of the students, and she was telling me about her AP English class. And as I was on my way out, I said, well, where are you going next? What class do you have next? Welding. She was on her way to welding. And I was like, yes, yes,
Great, yes.
It's amazing. So they're doing everything with no fear, and they really don't see themselves, and I have a daughter who's 24, they don't see themselves as constrained by the same kinds of ideas that we did. And so that's really the legacy. I mean, these kids are the legacy, and they're blazing a trail, and I feel very optimistic about our future because of these kids.
I agree.
It's awesome.
Well, I have to say that, as I've traveled this country, one thing that I have seen is that not everybody has a seat at the table. And I think we have to we have a responsibility to offer minorities a seat at the table. And especially I saw so many Latino women who said our voices are not heard and we don't feel seen. And so when Joe ran for president, I said, I promise you that Latina women will have a seat at the table. And so my first chief of staff was a woman who had been born in the Dominican Republic, and I made sure that women were of all levels, colors, cultures were seen and heard, because I think we have to lift women up, and that's our responsibility.
Well, in visiting different areas of Pennsylvania and different organizations, I was reminded to keep it in the Pennsylvania language of Mr. Rogers. And when he talked about when there's an issue, when you have a problem, look for the helpers. And I was impressed beyond anything to see firsthand in all kinds of capacities the helpers who exist in Pennsylvania, who don't receive the attention of people who opened up halfway houses for female offenders, people who volunteer their time for mental health, to offer mental health to people who are running drug courts, and the full team from the municipality to join them to make sure that these individuals succeed. And I think we're a state of helpers, and it just again it sort of rolls on itself. And early on we talk about how do you what are sort of advice for young women, or it's just get involved, pick something that interests you. It'll grow. You'll find other opportunities. But I think there are people all across the state who are involved in their communities in all different ways, helping. And they're making the difference, but they're doing it, it's sort of this rich underground.
So we have a great history and a great state, but what makes our Pennsylvania so special are our people. And I think I agree with Mrs. Shapiro, with Lori, that I think the younger women don't feel the constraints that maybe older women felt. But I do think it's important for women in leadership now to seek out young women and mentor them, give them the opportunity. We have, and I think we need to celebrate women in non-traditional types of leadership, so that so that Pennsylvania women know that there isn't just one path to successful leadership, but that there are many, many avenues. And it's not just recent. I mean, all you have to do is look at Pennsylvania history. I mean, think about World War II, when we were a manufacturing giant. Pennsylvania was especially Western Pennsylvania. Yeah. There were women who were making those planes. There were women who were working in those factories. And when the country was in need, women stepped forward. And so I think it's important to give and encourage young women to step forward, to continue to step forward.
Absolutely. So what advice would you give to women who want to create change in their community but don't know where to start?
Just do it.
Yeah.
Great advice.
Don't wait to be invited.
No.
And
Don't wait to be invited. Yes.
Don't underestimate the power of your voice. I mean, I think that happens a lot. Women in Pennsylvania and across this country are incredibly powerful, and there are so many different ways to raise your voice or stand up or speak out, whether it's publicly or more privately in your community, in your family. There are a million different ways, and all these actions and this community building, it's all cumulative. There is a compounding nature to every sort of step you take, every time you raise your voice, every conversation you have, every small good deed you do. I mean, it builds, and you really should never underestimate the power of your voice, and sometimes you don't see it. Sometimes you raise your voice, you're standing up for something, and you don't see what happens on the backside, but you've impacted somebody, and they've gone and impacted somebody else, and something's changing somewhere that you don't see because of what you did. So never underestimate the power of your voice.
So can I add one thing? So all of you out there in the audience, I looked at the list of the people who are attending. There are a lot of Pennsylvania leaders out there.
Yeah.
And so look around you, because you're in the midst and you're part of the Pennsylvania leadership, the women who are leading in their capacities in their own part of Pennsylvania. So I was impressed when I saw the accomplishments of all of the people who are here to participate in this program.
And mentor other women. That's important. Mentorship.
And support them.
Yep.
One thing, when I was in acting school, a teacher asked us the definition of acting, and we all tried to come up with these great, complicated explanations and definitions. And at the end of it, he just said, to act is to do. Just to do. Not to imagine it, not to wait for the perfect moment, but just do. Take that next step. And I think that that's sort of the message I'm getting from all of you is do it. Take that next good action. No matter how big, how small, in any area. So I would like to ask one final question that looks toward the future as we celebrate Women's History Month and look ahead to the nation's 250th anniversary. What message would you want young women and girls across Pennsylvania to carry forward into the next chapter of our Commonwealth's history?
I would encourage women, as I always do as a teacher, as an educator, to be independent, to make sure that no matter what, you can handle life on your own, because things happen in life that you never ever expected. And in our own family, when my son died from brain cancer, there was his wife left to raise 2 children on her own. And you need an education, or you need training, or you need something to where you can have your own money, stand on your own 2 feet, but also know yourself and stay true to yourself. So that would be my message.
I would also say that where you are in your life, in the States, this is your place. Invest in it to the way that you can, to the best of your ability.
And I would say you belong. You belong at the table. You belong in your community. You belong wherever you are, and you have an important role to play wherever you are. And never forget that. Don't be silent. You belong there, and you can speak up and advocate for whatever it is that is important to you. And that can mean so many different things to so many different people, but everyone belongs.
And you make history. You make your own family history when you think about it, especially as a woman, and as in our role as mothers, we help to shape our own family history, but find a way to make history. And I think there are a lot of women who have done that.
Yep.
Well, as we come to a close, I want to thank our panelists. Thank you all, not only for participating today.
Thank you.
Oh, great job. Carol would be very proud of you.
Thank you.
She has an amazing mother.
I do. And one of the themes that you kept bringing up is mentoring, and that's something I saw my mother do in the workforce with all the younger women that worked with and for her, and they are still a very important part of her life today, and watching them thrive has been the greatest legacy, I think, for my mom.
Yes.
So thank you all for that, what you've given us, the Commonwealth, the country, not only for being here today, but for your extraordinary service. We are all so lucky to have you in these roles.
Thank you.
So what you've heard today is a powerful reminder that leadership takes many forms. It lives in advocacy, in service, in family, and in the everyday decisions that impact Pennsylvania women, past and present, and continues to guide the future of our Commonwealth and our nation. So at this time, it's my pleasure to welcome back to the stage the Executive Director of America250PA, Cassandra Coleman.
So thank you so much, and what an incredible panel. How about another round of applause? I would like to thank all of you for your insights, and of course, thank you to our moderator, Melissa Fitzgerald. This has truly been a once-in-a-lifetime event, and I am just so proud to have shared it with all of you today. The women of Pennsylvania deserve every bit of recognition, of gratitude, and celebration. Before we wrap up, we have a very special treat. Joining us on stage in just a moment is a woman who has been a role model for generations. She is known as a Riveter, or as many of us know her, Rosie the Riveter. During World War II, as men left to serve, women stepped forward to power our nation's workforce, especially in the defense industry. In 1943, at just 17 years old, May began working for Boeing, helping to build B-17 Flying Fortresses and B-29 bombers. What started as a summer job turned into years of service as she helped build thousands of aircrafts that supported the war effort. Women like her became known as Rosie the Riveters, and their contributions were essential to victory. She remains an inspiration to us all, and in her own words, "Until I draw my last breath, I am going to fight for women and girls to make them realize how able they are, and if they have a dream, to follow it." That spirit, that strength, that belief in the next generation, that is what brings us here today. And please join me in welcoming from Bucks County, Pennsylvania, Pennsylvania's own 100-year-old May Cryer. I'm so proud of you women.
Oh, we're so proud of you. Thank you so much for being here. Wonderful.
Thank you. Well, thank you so
They
much.
match.
They match your outfit. There he goes. Oh, stand.
I'm so proud to be up here with you women.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Congratulations.
You paved the way for all of us.
Can I say a word?
Excuse me?
Can I say a word?
Absolutely, yes.
Up until 1941, it was a man's world. It's not a man's world anymore. You know, they didn't know how capable us American women were. We were outstanding. I'm so proud of what us women did during World War II. I always love to tell the story what Hitler said about us. He said us American women, he could defeat America because us American women couldn't produce. He said we're soft and spoiled.
Oh.
He said we spend too much time on cosmetics, you know, frivolous things. I think we showed Hitler what American women were.
Yeah. You good? Okay. Oops.
Find it.